It's been 24 years, 10 months, and 24 days since I said yes to leading with the passion. This is Benjamin Stewart, and you're listening to my podcast, Leading from the Edge. Well, good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's Storytelling Day here on this beautiful Wednesday up here on the mountain. For those that listen to my podcast on a regular basis, you saw my inconsistencies last week because I did not put out a post last week, just between working on a product launch and creating room for us to take our daughter to a Mustang training where she's out there taming Mustangs for the next 3 weeks. Just time kept on moving on, and I apologize. I will likely do a couple podcasts this week. If nothing else, it helps me get ahead. But it was about 19 years ago. It's Storytelling Day, I guess I should say. About 19 years ago, I've been on staff at a church where I was first serving. It was in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I had been hired on as a praise and worship leader and a youth pastor. And being such a dreamer, I am still such a dreamer. I am always drawing out these crazy plans. But the story I want to share with you, I was on the way home and I headed to Walmart to pick up some things. It's kind of, I would say, a lot of my stories are on the way to or on the way home from Walmart. But this is early on. So I was headed to Walmart before going home to our new newlywed house. Like I said, it was 19 years ago. And as I was driving, I passed by the Lowe's building in Lake Charles and I saw that it was for sale. And I was like, what? Because here I am, a new youth pastor on staff at a church, and I'm immediately thinking, again, I'm a high I, high D in the DISC test. I'm immediately thinking youth center, right? So I pulled over and I drove around the parking lot, kind of just looking over the building. I got out. I did the whole walking the perimeter of the building. I literally stepped it out. I learned how to step out and you can guess the length of the building. Now I could use a satellite image and I could literally find out the length of the building. I guess I could have called. But I'm this kind of guy. I was so excited. So I walked the perimeter of the building to measure it, the building size. I got out my notebook and I drew it out on my notebook. I went around the back. I saw the old outdoor lumber yard. The whole reason why they were closing that Lowe's was they were building a new one with an indoor lumber yard. But all those things, it's completely empty. But I measured those buildings and then got back in my car after drawing all that out and I went back to shopping. But over the next 3 weeks, this is how crazy I am. I literally drew out the entire building. I had being an electrical engineer, major student when I went to college, went for electrical engineering and for psychology. So I loved CAD. I loved computer aided design. And so I literally spent the next 3 weeks in my office in between working on music or youth plans, drawing out this building. I drew out the plans. I had a 2-story worship center. I had an indoor arena. I had a game room. I had Christian bookstore. I had offices, laser tag, bowling alley, indoor gym, a coffee shop, even an outdoor skate park. I'd even drawn out for the outdoor lumberyard for the laser tag, like 2-story scenarios, 3-story scenarios, just crazy things, right? Lots of things. I even did a CAD drawing of the design, like of the facilities. I called the real estate company to find out how much the purchase price was. Kind of figured for a nonprofit, they'd take like 10% off of that. I looked up the local rules on how to make that land nonprofit, like so that we wouldn't have to pay for taxes on it, what I would have to go through, what board I would have to put up, what zoning things I'd have to work out with the city. I built out my materials list to be able to price out the build out, including everything down to the studs And I even put in there the difference between steel versus wood studs. Literally everything, because that's how I dreamed. I was like, what could this look like? What would this be? What could we do? I mean, just everything. I had time frames in it, all that. And it was somewhere around that time. Again, this was 19 years ago, so my stories sound great because I don't remember all the exact details. my wife talks about that all the time, but because I fill in details with my emotions, and so you're getting these. But then that moment came. I was in my office, and my pastor, he called up to my office at that time, called over to my office, and he asked to meet with me. And when I sat down with him, he asked me an odd question, one that I don't think he'd ever asked me before. And he said, Ben, what do you need in order to grow the student ministries? I was like, what? God, you are opening up the doors, right? So I must have, I don't know how long I talked. You'd have to ask Perry how long I talked. But I remember just laying out everything that I was thinking. And with the excitement and my ability to speak very fast, in fact, for these podcasts, I have to tell myself to slow down. I'm sure that I went through the whole thing in probably less than 60 seconds, right? And I really don't remember if he was impressed or if he was annoyed. But I do remember that when I finished, he said something to me, and it stuck with me. He looked me in the eyes and he said, Ben, you will never have a youth building. I mean, he literally said, you will never have a youth building that's just for teens. That's not how we're going to run ministry here. I didn't laugh at the time. I was so ticked. I was mad. I was hurt. I was angry. I wasn't upset with him, honestly. I was blessed in one sense. I mean, I guess I could have been upset with him, but I was mad at God. I was blessed in the fact that I knew that God was bigger than any man. And I've had many opportunities in my life where I've had to learn that. And honestly, I was just mad at God. I mean, why in the world would God let me dream like that and then just make it impossible for me to do? And I know some of you guys are solution finders in your brain, emotional solution finders. So you're like, well, maybe God was going to move you to another thing, or maybe he was giving you that skill set so that later on you could use it again. And all those things are probably true. But in the moment, my gosh, I was upset. Like some of you guys would even thought, well, Ben, you could have done it without your pastor. But that's not how I function. I had to be broken in that moment. That's not where I was. I was stuck in my broken heart because I placed my treasure in the wrong place. That afternoon, I was making another run to Walmart, and when I drove by the building, I was so mad. I remember I pulled over into the same building, and I yelled at God in front of that building in the parking lot. I remember saying something along the lines of, so this is how it works? You let me dream? You give me this gift of dreaming and being this wild thinker and faith person. I say faith in quotes. And my faith gets rewarded with failure. Obviously, I'm still alive, so apparently God wasn't too upset with me about that. But I will tell you that life went on. And I was okay. I really didn't even think much about it anymore. When I left that parking lot, I just put that dream to bed. I put it aside. And I just put my hand to the plow and I kept on moving forward. Fast forward quickly across 8 months, I was doing good ministry. We had good events. We had wonderful God experiences in our services. But about 8 months after that date, and I didn't think of it in relation to that date at the time, I was just feeling like I wasn't creative anymore. In fact, I was beginning to question whether or not I was in the right place. I was running out of things to do for the youth ministry, things to say. I was feeling like I wasn't cut out for youth ministry or just ministry in general. And I was struggling with everything. Nothing was colorful enough. Everything felt bland. Everything felt like what everybody else was doing. I remember even looking in the mirror. Like I went to a youth pastors conference where I was asked to speak. Don't know why Alan Anglin would have me come in and speak to other youth pastors. He never asked me again, so I wonder if I was really bad. But I remember going into the room, and it was that season in my life where I walked into the room and I had a goatee, and everybody in the room had a goatee. And I remember feeling like I'm just like everybody else. And that night in the hotel, I shaved off my mustache and I shaved off underneath my bottom lip. And all I had then was just like a soul patch, because I was like, I am going to be different, dadgummit. little insight into my thinking. But I was struggling with everything being bland. Nothing was colorful enough. I used to dream up things, but I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything on the inside of me. But as dense as I was, I didn't realize what was happening. And I didn't realize the effects of my treasure being in the wrong place, and just was dense about all this. And we've been having revival, and God was really dealing with me on this whole piece of surrender. Specifically for us, it was about finances, but it was just a season of surrendering. And I was driving to Walmart. Yes, everything happens on that drive in my life. But I looked to the right and I saw that the building had sold and it was being renovated to be an Ashley Furniture, right? And I felt something on the inside of me tug me to pull into that parking lot. As I pulled into the parking lot, I knew what I needed to do. It wasn't that I was holding on to a grudge. I wasn't even mad at God anymore. In fact, I think that He truly had forgiven me for my outrage. I don't think that He was upset at me being upset with Him. I think God knows when we're struggling with things. In fact, I know God knows when we're struggling with things. But I knew what I needed to do. I never moved my treasure. And I asked God, why am I no longer dreaming? This right here in this parking lot, God, was the last big dream that I had. Why am I not dreaming anymore? And I immediately felt the Spirit of God come upon me and challenge me. And here's what I felt in my spirit. And I remember these words chasing across, or I should say running across my mind. This is what He said to me. Ben, you were chasing the wrong thing. You were chasing the dream. So that when that dream didn't come true, you were done. But if you had been chasing the dream giver, then I would have given you another dream. Man, when that hit my heart, I remember just crying. I remember just asking God to please change my heart, to show me how to put my treasure in Him and to chase after Him, the giver of all dreams, the solution to all problems, the reason why my heart beats. And I remember making a commitment to Him that day to only chase Him. That I would dream out everything that He puts across my mind and my heart, but I would never remove it from the altar, and that I would keep my treasure in Him. And I remember telling God that I was sorry. So why this story? Well, it all comes from a conversation that I was having with my wife last night. I was just talking out loud through my question of who am I? What is me? What are my passions? And if you know anything about me, I ask that question actually a lot. And I used to think it was such a hard question to answer because it felt like it was defining me forever. And I've heard everyone say, know your passion and build your life around it. But my concern, and I tell people the same thing, and I've honestly done that most of my life. But it's a little different for me because I used to be afraid, what if my passion's wrong? Like, not like sin wrong, but not what God wanted me to be passionate about. Or I think it's my passion and it really isn't. It's just a symptom of my passion. And to that, I literally say, who cares? I'm all about finding passion and living it out in some manner that we can do, that where our passion, we live it out and it provides for our living in our lifestyle. In fact, I would say that this is my message to my core. But I'm always in the process of reinventing myself. And I guess I probably shouldn't say reinventing myself. That sounds bad. I've said that several times. I'd like to... How about I'm just trying to find myself in this season? Because I think it's different in every season. I think that there is unique things about us that get expressed in different seasons. Whether it's different seasons of pressure, or whether it's different seasons of age, or whether it's different seasons of our demographic or geographic. Maybe that's all that God wants us to do, is to find Him in us in every season. After all, I mean, Jeremiah, was it 17 and verse 9 says, the heart deceives above all things. It's sick, and who can understand it? I mean, we can't trust our hearts. There's a discovery process that we're having in God, while at the same time we continue to have with ourselves. There are still things that come out of me that I don't understand. And I'm not talking about like unintelligible words. I mean real words, real actions, real thoughts where I go, where did that even come from? And again, being a high D, high I, some of the words that I say, I don't even believe them myself. It's a really fun life. But in this pursuit of God, I want to give myself the room to not know everything now. In fact, I want to give you the room to not know everything now. As in, realize that this is a journey and the end goal is today. It's not 20 years from now. It's not when the church finally reaches 500 people. It's not when your business finally breaks 10 million. It's not when you're able to stay home 2 days out of the week. No, the journey is now. Finding yourself in this season means finding yourself in God today. Let me say that again. Today is the goal. Luke 12:34 says, for where your treasure is, there your heart is also. So let's be careful where we place our treasure. If it's in the solution that you have, or if it's in the passion that's in you, then you're going to put your treasure there. And think about that for a minute. If I put my treasure in my passions, then I'm likely going to miss it when God moves me into another area of life. Because I will follow God. Listen to that. I mean, you will follow God. If God told you to pack it up and move, or to take that different job, you're going to do it because you're a good Christian. I know we don't like the word good Christian. Get over it. You love God. You want to do good. But we have a hard time. And why? I think it's because we left our heart back there. Because that's where we put our treasure. For where our treasure is, there our heart will be also. And I can think of so many times in my life where I would struggle with moving on or moving forward because I had placed my heart and my treasure in the wrong place. Like even recently, I say recently, in the last 2 years, wow, that's become recent for me. I'm 40, am I 45? I'm 45. And 2 years is now recent. So, when I'm 60, it's going to be the last 10 years. But even transitioning from pastoring as my vocation, I've struggled because I placed my treasure there. In other words, I made my identity around being a pastor. That was the place where I felt like I had the most value because I placed my treasure there. I mean, think about that, friends. When we struggle with the changes that are happening around us, we have to ask ourselves, Or ask God, did I put my treasure there? Did I place my treasure in earthly things? And then we see in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. In other words, where you're putting your treasure. Do not lean on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. And we love to quote this scripture. Trust in the Lord. I think I'm pretty good at that, right? It's what pulls me through when my treasure has been in the wrong place. With all of my heart. More like with most of my heart and most of my actions. Or I guess if I'm honest, it would be with all of my actions, but my heart is where my treasure is. I mean, dang it, I don't like this podcast because I'm looking back at some wasted emotions. Because my treasure was in position for 19 years as a pastor. I don't want to be selfish anymore. Continue on, it says, lean not into your own understanding. And that just compounds, right? It's just adding. If I trust it with all my heart, then I don't have to have understanding. But alas, I need it to survive, right? Can I just call out all of those who are listening to this that are like me, that you require understanding in order to have peace? Can I say that that's not a personality thing, it's a treasure thing? Okay, now I know you probably didn't like that, but I think that's a breakthrough for me. I mean, I really do. That if I require understanding in order to have peace, then I've probably placed my treasure in the wrong things. Yeah, okay. So in all my ways, acknowledge him. This is actually my favorite word in the Greek language. And I guess that's a broad statement because I don't know the entire Greek language. And I'm sure there's better words in the Greek language. But it's my favorite word in the Greek New Testament that I've memorized. The word acknowledge is the word yada. And it literally means to know by intimate experience. We're not hearing in this scripture to look to God all the time. It's saying that we need to acknowledge him. We need to yada him in all of our ways. In all of our ways. And when I think of ways, I think of the Wave app, right? I don't know if you guys use that. A lot of people just use Google or Apple Maps or whatever it's called. I love Waze because it consistently makes adjustments by the reporting of other people who are adding to the app. And because God is that big, it's kind of like he's the Waze app. We put in our destination that he gives us. We see the path in front of us, but we're not looking at the whole picture. We're just looking at the next 5 miles most of the time. But we don't know that up ahead, even though the normal path would say, stay on I-40, stay on I-40, that there's been a major accident on I-40 and I've got to take a right-hand turn to some service road that then goes through some little bitty town in Beebe, Arkansas in order to get back on the interstate. And it added probably 15 minutes to my drive. But those who were stuck by the accident, they were there for 2.5 hours. If we just tune in to God's channel and just trust that sometimes God's going to change things up. And sometimes it's the last minute and he had the audacity not to tell you until the last minute. It's our yada. It's our opportunity to know God by experience. I mean, holy cow, do you realize how exciting that is? I mean, as a pastor, you now could have a completely new look on COVID, right? This is your yada. This is your opportunity to intimately experience God on an entirely different path than what you thought it was going to be. Talk about hanging on for dear life. Maybe you as a business owner or as a business leader, where do you need to acknowledge God right now? In what ways do you need to know him by experience? In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. And the word direct your path, we see it in the NIV where it says makes your path straight. But I don't think that gives it enough justice. It's actually a verb. It's an action that God takes for us. In all your ways, intimately experience God. And he takes the action to make sure your way is right. Wow. For you and for me. So back to my story. See, God was leading me much deeper than that building, right? It was about my heart. It was way bigger than a $3.6 million building that was going to be a $6.1 million renovation. It was much bigger than that. And maybe, just maybe, what you're doing right now is really about now and not about whether or not he's going to make that, quote, dream come true. It's about today. In leadership, in my opinion, it is the everyday piece. It means that every day you're striving to be at least one step ahead, at least one experience in front of those that you have been given the gift of leading. And it's not a matter of being the best, and it's not a badge that you get to wear, and it's not about being the brightest person in the room. It's simply about having the courage to lead. It takes commitment, persistence, and patience. But above everything else, it takes an everyday God experience. My name is Benjamin Stewart, and until next time, go lead from the edge.